Excellent. After a little bit of technical jeopardy, I think we're live. So if you are with us, please say something in the chat to let us know that you are hearing at least myself. And yeah, just share as well. Good to hear people already saying good morning, but I'd love to hear where all of you are watching in from. Let us know and tell us what the weather's like, because today here in Brighton, it is beautiful. It's a blue, sunny sky. And we're joined by David McQueen, leadership coach, speaker, soon to be author.
Yes.
Soon to be
painful though. I say that with a smile. It's so painful, but yes.
Well, we might go into that because my co-founder is trying to write a book, and so he might be able to, relate to the pain of birthing that book. And you also run your own podcast, is that correct?
I do. It's on a bit of a hiatus at the moment, but it's coming back. I've got some stuff lined up. So this is my practice.
I know a lot about podcast hiatuses.
Yes. All good.
Where are you based? Where are you calling in from?
So I'm in a little village called Radlett, which is about between, if people know where St Albans or Watford is, just out in Hertfordshire, I'm just somewhere in between the two. It's a nice little leafy village where I can mind my own business. And it's lovely and cold out here. It's lovely and cold.
That sounds lovely. Is Harry Potter world around?
Yes. So so as the crow flies, if you go a 5 or 10 minute drive to the right, you end up in Hogswart, basically. Yeah.
My daughter wants to go there for her birthday, so I might be popping in. And how are you today? Oh, nice. How are you? How's your morning been?
Today's been really good. So got up. I have a writing club every morning. There are about 7 or 8 of us. We get together. We jump on a call. We've been doing it for a year now, from 7 till 8. Every morning we get together and we just write, whether it's for our books, articles, thesis, little blogs. But we basically spend an hour where we just encourage each other and we just write. And then at the end, we just kind of reflect on it. So I start my day with that. And then I went for a walk, had a little bit of a stretch and went for a walk. It was bloody cold out there, but it was really good. And then I came back in, had a lovely shower. Just like everybody know, I'm nice and shiny and clean now, and got here on time for this podcast.
Oh, that's amazing. It's like those I think of those like influencers going, your morning routine, start at 5 a.m, meditate.
Yeah. I'm happy for them.
That sounds like a nice start to the day. I like that.
I'm happy. The people who start at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm really happy for them. That's time that I'm still turning over at that point. So I'm really happy for you at 5, 6:30 earliest, and that's it for me. So yeah, it's all good.
Awesome. How about you, Ben? How share your current state?
My current state, actually, today I'm better. It's good to have this in. It was kind of a motivation to sort of get up and do something, because the last days have been not very much getting up. We kind of inadvertently took COVID out of the boys' primary school, went on holiday to Devon last week, where we marinated in the boys' COVID as a family on a house on Dartmoor, and then came back with a full house of COVID, where we've been since then. So an all-round COVID own goal, courtesy of primary school children.
Oh, wow. It's weird in a way because it's here, isn't it? Whichever way we look at it, we are all going to know somebody that's going to be impacted by it. And I think it's just how we adjust, right? God, I tell you, I'm still running away from it though, Ben. I really am.
Keep running.
I'm literally here on the other side, kind of like, let's do this. Let's do
it. Yeah, stick on your antivirus filters right now.
Exactly.
But are you feeling better today?
Yeah, a bit more energy today, which is good. And actually, it's good too, because it's good to have something like this, and then you sort of there is a kind of invitation to reconnect with the world, because we've been sort of, locked into our kind of plague house for the last days. So, good to kind of have this and this opportunity to kind of reconnect, and that kind of feels energizing. And like same because I'm also in Brighton, and the kind of the sunny, clear, crisp days. Actually, yesterday was in the garden. Just the sun on the skin is just such a super kind of energizing thing. So definitely on the right way of the curve.
Oh, I'm loving your metaphors. The marinading in COVID and plague house.
Beautiful, eh? Beautiful.
It gets me so, you know, I can feel the disease. Oh gosh. Yeah, I'm actually. It's beautiful sunny day. I'm actually coming off a cold. Thankfully, not the other C word. But yeah, just trying to re-energize myself and re-engage with the world after a half term of taking a bit of a break, which was in lovely, not so sunny, very wet and lakey, the Lake District.
Beautiful.
I hear they say that. They've told me it's a beautiful.
No matter what the weather is, the Lake District is beautiful. Doesn't matter.
There were some stunning views once we decided to brave the rain. But yeah, I need to go back. I need to go back and experience it fully. But yeah, enough of holiday talk and COVID talk. I think we should ban the C word from now on from these conversations. We're here because I was brought to my attention and we're going to say we're allowed to say rant. Ben brought to my attention a rant that David shared on LinkedIn about the need to learn how to price well and what it means and the different aspects. It was like a really bullet pointed, it's like manifesto. These are the things that we need to really think about when we're pricing. And so we want to sort of like dive into that, explore that idea. Hopefully for those of you who are listening, who are struggling with working out how to price better. When I say better, it's more often than not, it's what we talk about on our Happy Pricing course is actually you are worth more than you think. And there's maybe something that limits you in terms of actually getting what you charge. But it isn't just about making more money. It's really, for us, it's about finding that right exchange that is good for both you and your customer, rather than trying to con people out of money. So that's a bit of a disclaimer there. We're not trying to just maximize profit for profit's sake. There's something here about really having adult conversations around pricing and money. And so if you have any specific questions, sorry, Ben.
And value was all I was going to add to that.
Sorry, value. Thank you very much.
Value. That's the conversation we want them to have.
That is the conversation we want. But if you have any very specific questions, if there's something that you're struggling with at the moment, please share them in the chat, or there's an ask a question feature, and we will try to get to them as we have this conversation, particularly if it's like pertinent to a topic that we're talking about at the moment. But before we dive into the pricing chat, I think it's very useful to actually have some context, because we're going to be talking about this, I think, purely from mainly from the kind of the services angle, the service sort of industry, and more specifically, maybe if you're a coach, a consultant, you're essentially sometimes you think you're selling your time. So that kind of aspect there, talking to that kind of situation. And with that, it'd be good to actually understand why we have David. And so maybe for those people who follow us on the Waking Up to Money podcast who don't know you, could you maybe just share a bit about what you do at the moment? What's your focus in terms of your activities, and maybe potted history of how you got to what you do now?
100%. So let me start off by saying that I'm very driven by purpose. My first thing is my family's always first. Like, I love my work, I absolutely love it, but I'll drop anything for my family. I just make that really clear to me. I make that to clients all the time. They go, yeah, really there. I'm like, no, my daughter's ill. Sorry, meetings next week. So very married, beautiful woman, lucky to have me. I'm incredibly lucky to have her. I have two daughters, Rihanna 23 and Lauren 19. And in terms of business, I run I have my hands in a couple of businesses. I'm like a portfolio person. I get bored very easy, so I have to spread my risk, as it were. But my main business I run with my wife is called Q Squared, both McQueen Q. So I just thought I was clever. Nobody else gets it, but anyway, I love it. It's called Q Squared, and we do learning and development. So we work with a number of organizations, both large corporates, SMEs, and nonprofits, just around how do we develop really good leadership skills? How do we develop confidence skills? How do we develop communication skills? Because at the end of the day, no matter what you're selling or doing, it really, really comes down to people, right? It really comes down to how we are going to be able to communicate with each other. The quick potted history is my parents were from the Caribbean. So when I was young, I had 4 career choices, right? A lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, or something in finance, all right? And the immigrant story most kids will know about. And so I went and I did accounts because I wanted to make them happy. And plus I wanted to know about money. I never qualified as an accountant. There was no interest in that whatsoever. But I did that. But when I was doing that, I learned a lot of stuff around. People really liked it when I presented and made stuff quite simple. They hated accounts, but if I could make it simple for them, it was really good. After about 8 years, I was like, okay, I really love this stuff around IT. And I went into IT, did a lot of developing and financial reporting. And again, I was being asked to present and communicate and make things quite simple for people. And people asked me to do CVs, help them with interview skills. I'm like, I'm a bloody accountant, or I'm in IT. Why are you asking me these things? But I realized people saw something that I could help them with that I didn't realize myself. And so after about 15 or so years working, I stepped away bravely from the corporate world, told my wife, I'm jacking it in and getting my own job. She's like, as long as you can pay the bloody bills, I don't care what you do. She was very supportive, to be fair, and really kind of like a real inspiration behind me, even when I lost the desire sometimes to work with individuals. And my journey started, as many people who are listening on this call, my journey started out by me being in that space and not necessarily understanding my true value. So I would charge a small amount for a speech, or I'd do it for free for exposure. All right. I will come back to that a bit later. And I went and did that for exposure. But along the way, what I realized was there were lots of bits around careers. And my first part of that journey was around careers and presentation skills. It was getting people to understand, how can I do a job really well? How can I run my business really well? And how can I communicate? So how can I sell my idea? How can I really do a good presentation? All those things I was working on. But then in about the last 5 or 6 years, maybe slightly longer, I realized there was a real demand for people who were leading their own companies, be it the large corporates or individuals who were solo entrepreneurs. How do I lead this properly? How do I lead myself? And so I got really immersed in that, study that as much as I can. And now that's where, if you look on my LinkedIn profile, it says all things leadership, because I just couldn't think of any other cheesy title. And that's what I do. And I love it. I absolutely, that's the little potted history as to how I've got here right now.
Now I understand why we're talking to you. So there feels like so much alignment in terms of the journey, this kind of like random walk in career space, for want of a better term, until we find where we actually feel best. But also I think this real awareness, or I think real affinity to the idea of good communication, but coming from a place of clarity.
Yeah,
you know,
100%.
What do I stand for? And one of the things that I'm very admire about you, particularly when I follow you on LinkedIn, is just you're very clear. Mm-hmm. You're very and it comes from what I believe is a place of clarity in terms of what you talk about. And so I think it's really nice to hear that. And it's also interesting to hear, well, this is the bit we want to get onto here now, is this whole journey of understanding the value of that.
Yes.
Or not even that, having that interchange or exchange with people so that the value is clear. And with him. And so maybe the first thing is like, when do you remember, like, or you're talking about before, like doing stuff for free or doing stuff for a low cost? Can you remember what was driving you at the time, maybe to relate to some people who might be listening?
So I think that if I'm going to go out on my own, I need to at least be able to cover the salary that I had from before. So that was my base. Got your bills. Holidays may have to wait. Holidays might get downgraded somewhat, but I wanted to be able to make sure I had money to be able to cover those basics. So my thinking at that time was, say for the sake of argument, if I'm earning 40 grand, I want to make sure that the work that I do is the equivalent to that. And so for a lot of it, even when I was asking people questions, it felt like a dark art, because I'd ask people and they didn't want to say anything. I'm like, what do you do? How much is your day rate? And they're like, well, what are you looking to do? Just tell me your bloody day rate. Give me a fee band. Give me a range. And then they want to, oh, what's your hourly rate? Oh, why are you asking me these questions? I'm like, I'll tell you mine. I tell people mine. And they're like, you shouldn't be so forthcoming with your day. I'm like, what's going to happen? Is the world going to stop turning as a result? This is what it is. And this is what I want to do in order to be able to earn 40K a year. And that was my basic stuff. And then I remember I went to this event and I was one of 2 speakers. And I was the warm-up act basically for this speaker before. And I just wanted to talk about being abundant and being motivated and doing what you have to do. I rock on this stage and I'm like, these people are never going to forget me. I'm going to come and I'm going to drop humor. I'm going to go to the wall. People are going to feel like, oh my God, did he just say that? But I'm also going to drop truths in that. And I did it. And I remember doing the speech And it was the first standing ovation I've ever got in my life. I don't really like standing ovations. They make me feel really awkward. You know, in TED when they go, that stuff makes me creep out. Sit down. You enjoyed it. Take your notes. Keep it moving. All right. But yeah. And it felt really weird. And this guy came on after me, and he did this speech, and he said, "How am I going to follow that?" And he was a professional speaker. And in my mind, I'm like, you don't follow it. You just do your own thing and just do it. But the energy in the room went really down, and he was just like really dull and what have you. And then I found that he made $4.5 grand, and I made £150. I was so pissed. I was like, what is the how does that work? So I had the conversation with him, and he was telling me about an organization called the Professional Speakers Association, which is effectively one of these associations where you go to where they teach you how to build a speaking business, how you charge, you know, the whole shebang around it. And that fascinated me. And I was like, that's like, you know, not even 10 times the amount of, you know, the multiples that you have there of being able to earn it. But then I didn't want to just speak to go and get the money. I didn't want, I do charge a healthy fee, and I'll be very transparent about what that is during the podcast. But I just didn't want to be, I'm going to be the £4,500 speaker. That just didn't resonate for me. I wanted people to really learn stuff. And I was doing a lot of stuff in schools as well. So even when I was in schools, I was very mindful that I can't go to a school and go, it's going to be £4.5 grand. I could go and go, well, I'll charge you 300 quid, and they wouldn't have a problem with that. And so what I did is I started to build that model so I could cover the salary. And then something else happened to me afterwards. And I'm hoping I'm not going too far ahead in the podcast. But it was, what if I'm not working? What if I'm like, you're both parents, right? So half term comes, right? Screw working in half term, okay? Because you know those kids want you when they're younger, they need your attention, right? So let's write that off already, right? There's 6 weeks in the calendar already that are written off. There's the half terms, there's Easter, there's sometime in summer holiday. Like, forget it. You can try and do your stuff. You got to work around it. So I was like, okay, so let me think about this carefully. For 46 weeks of the year, I need to be able to earn some money because 6 weeks have written off. So I was like, what do I do? So then I was like, okay, so I need to make my salary in 46 weeks of the year so that I've got enough bandwidth to be able to do that. And then I was like, okay, let me do it to 45 weeks because just in case I get a cold or a cough, or let's not mention the other C word, right? But you know, if something comes up in that, what can I do? So I basically said, right, here's my planner. In 45 weeks, I need to earn, for the sake of argument, 40 or 50 grand. How am I going to charge that? How am I going to sell that? How am I going to do the big events? How am I going to do the small events? And then since then, from what I've worked, I started to tweak it from there, if that makes sense. So that's the basis for the formula that I actually started. Does that help answer?
Oh, that's a great starting point. Ben, I'm sure there's lots of thoughts and ideas springing up. Well, depends if the C word's allowing it.
No, I mean, absolutely. I think it's interesting because one of the things that we're always kind of getting people to think about is this a money ceiling that they have. And in a way, it can work kind of both ways around. So like one of the ways in, like you talk about, people have an idea about what it is. Of course, like I need to earn this. But then kind of don't start to factor in things like you say, like kind of time and, time doing other things or whatever it might be. And so that kind of practical approach is a really kind of good sort of starting place. I'm kind of interested to know where it kind of goes, because, of course, what tends to happen is we then draw a line in our minds, so to speak, and that becomes the line that we inadvertently peg ourselves to. And I'm kind of really curious how you kind of move on from that, not wanting to kind of move on from Carlos's kind of sort of structured sort of podcast notes, but I'm kind of curious how that kind of line in the sand becomes a helpful start point, but whether that can also then become a limiting point too.
100%, and I'm happy to jump in on that as well, but without messing you up, Carlos, because I've seen the format, so we're good. All right. So the key thing here was I was like, oh, so I can earn 45 grand. What's to stop me from earning 70 or 80 grand? And so for those of you who are listening, I'm 52. All right. And I know it's all right. You don't have to tell me, but I know. Okay. Right. So I'm 52. I'm 50. For those who can't see, right? I'm just demonstrating. But when I first bought, my first house that I bought was 70 grand. What could you get today for £70,000 realistically? So I realized that just in terms of earning and whatever was going to happen in my life, and we've had ups and downs, had to sell our house and all the stuff that happened with it, put our kids in private school, all the other different choices that we made. So with all those choices, I had to adjust accordingly. And so I said, the same effort that made me do 45 grand, why can't I use that same effort and make 90 grand? Mm-hmm. The only thing that needs to change is my promise of value and how I bring that to the actual table. And what it was is it sounds really weird, but I'm not driven by money. But I love the ability to know that if I want to turn something on, I can go and do that and make that and then just step back. I love the idea of being able to go, if I wanted to, and I hope I don't sound in any way arrogant to anybody's working here, but I've worked it out that I can actually go, if I wanted to work for half a year, I can drive my business in such a way that I can do 6 months and then bugger off for 6 months. And that for me, I'll get restless anyway, so that's never going to happen. I'll be way too restless. But the ability to know that you can do that because you have a real sense of who you are as an individual and what you bring to the table is powerful. And the one thing I'll drop in here just before we do go to the question, Carlos, is this. The big shift for me was when I recognized that my client base didn't only have to be based in the UK. When I realized that my client base was global, that was it. That totally shifted it for me, especially like faster Wi-Fi and broadband, and it wasn't dial-up, right? Because I'm going way back now. It wasn't that anymore. From the time I was able to know that I could connect with a worldwide audience, that totally shifted my whole point of value.
Firstly, I really appreciate you acknowledging my need for structure.
I came back to it. I came back. Right?
Where they're going off piste. What are they talking about? Stop doing that. No. I think we got to a really good place because one of the first things that sprang to mind is like this question that I first heard from this guy called Paul Jarvis, who wrote a book called A Company of One.
Yes.
And it's not growth for growth's sake.
Mm-hmm.
But to do that, you have to be able to answer the question, what is enough?
Yes.
And when I heard you say, you talked about how you're spending your time, who you're spending your time with, what you're spending your time on, those were essentially the elements of being able to define what is enough.
Yes.
Because you need, like you said, both myself and Ben have young kids. We want to be able to spend time with them. And so that's going to dictate the finite resources we have and how we use them. But then there's this other aspect of it. It's like, while we have finite time, doesn't necessarily limit the amount of money we can earn. And there's an aspect here of where, before we may be limited by location, geographical location. And so that kind of puts a ceiling maybe on the amount of money we can earn unless we physically travel. But now, like you said just now, the world, for some of us, again, caveat, it depends on the type of work you do, but for some of us who are more knowledge-based workers, for want of a better term, the world is our market. And so the limitations, in a sense, aren't necessarily about the market rate or the industry, but potentially it's within us.
Yes, 100%.
And our perception of what we can earn, what we are allowed to earn, and maybe our capabilities to get to that point. And so it's interesting here. Maybe Ben can pick up on this a little bit and we can have a conversation about. You talked at the beginning about day rates and speaker rates, and then even that speaker circuit. And there's a rate.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we talk about when Waking Up to Money on the course is this idea of like, actually, there's never a fixed rate. Correct me if I'm wrong here. There's a number.
Yes.
But it's dependent on a dialogue.
Yes.
I don't know, Ben, if you want to pick that up, and then we can run with that.
Yeah, I mean, to my mind, I mean, and everything that you're saying, David, kind of really, really resonates. And to my mind, the kind of the thing around a number, of course, is a shorthand, because everybody feels a little bit uncomfortable in the sort of negotiation bit. And so I think to an extent, everyone's looking for a kind of shortcut to get out of it. And so it's like, the conversation when you were referencing earlier, asking people, what is it? What do you charge? What's your rate? And everyone's saying, no, don't share your data. And that kind of happens even to an extent when you're discussing things with prospective clients. And this idea of rate is a way of kind of getting out of the discomfort of ambiguity and the kind of ambiguity of that, this, that, and the other. And I think we sort of default to that out of an ease and out of a kind of laziness. But of course, what we're doing in defaulting to that is we're sort of obscuring the opportunity. And by opportunity, I don't just mean the opportunity for me to earn more from doing work with you, but what we're kind of doing is we're obscuring the opportunity of me working with you. Because of course, it's not, as we talk about, on the kind of podcast, it's when we provide a service, we kind of benefit in a sense once, and our clients benefit time and time and time and time and time and time and time again. And I think kind of understanding that is a really kind of important part of the sort of dialogue. And so getting out of that ambiguity that kind of rates is a bit of a kind of fig leaf for, and starting to embrace in the conversation of kind of value for us kind of points to a kind of big opportunity for people.
No, 100%. And I think that the big thing around, the big learning I got around that pricing is that I will tell people what my day or hourly rate is if they need to know it. But I just say, look, I need you to understand as well that I'm pricing this on value, not on a day rate. Because I can say to you, I can come to anybody and go, okay, my day rate starts at $5,000. And people will look at me and they go, what the hell, $5,000? That's a lot of money. It's all relative, because the same kind of information that I give people, they'll go to, I don't know, an Ernst & Young or a McKinsey or what have you, pay a hell of a lot more, but they won't have the same intimacy. It'll be a junior member of staff doing the majority of the work, and they won't have that kind of experience that I bring. And so I'm okay with that. I actually sit with that figure and I'm absolutely fine with it. And again, as I say, for those who are listening, I say it with no kind of arrogance, but it's the number that I've put on for myself that I say I'm worth. When I go for a keynote, my keynote starts at $5,000. And again, I told you guys at the beginning, it started at 150, but it started at 3, right? So I've made this way from a Nissan Micra all the way up to a Tesla Model X. Right? So I've made my way up there. But for me, that was my promise of value, because I realized this, and this is really key here. So I'll give you quick examples. I say to individuals, if you're going to go start speaking in public, a base price, £1,500. And they go, an hour? I go, you're not charging for an hour. You're charging for all the years of your experience. When you pay $5,000 for me to go and speak for 90 minutes, you're paying for 52 years of my experience with clients, my personal stuff, my anecdotes, the outcomes that I've had. And there are individuals who have been in front of my presentations who have taken stuff from me and they've emailed me back and they've gone, I really appreciate what you did and the presentation you give. I closed a $500,000 deal. I'm like, that's 100x return for that organization. And so very often people get caught up with it just being a price that they have to charge per hour, because we are stuck in that whole accountant, solicitor, and even so much coach consultant hour thing. It's not the price per hour, it's the value that you bring and the value that you believe to bring. I'll give you one quick example before we finish. There was a young lady who came to me, had a really brilliant stuff around financial empowerment. But her problem was that she didn't feel empowered enough to be able to charge the right amount, and felt that when she went to go and do stuff, loads of people went to. I said, all right, here's what I'm going to do for you. Give me your content. We'll sit down. I'm going to charge you $5,000. I said, and you don't have to pay me until it's all done. She said, $5,000 is a lot of money there. I said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take your product, because you've got some amazing stuff. We're only going to offer it to 100 people, and you're going to be there and you're going to support them with this network, and you're going to charge $2,000. She said, there's no way, Dave. Absolutely no way. Sold out. She said, I think you deserve more than that. I said, no, it's fine. It's a lesson. I'm a believer in abundance. There's a lesson I want you to learn here. All that was the difference. It was a shift in your mind. That's all it was. I said that I was going to charge you $5,000. I'm sticking with $5,000. I don't need to double it. That's absolutely cool. Go run with it. Go and teach someone else. And the thing here that's really important to understand is not so much just the price we're charging, but the value that we bring to our clients that will shift it. So £1,500 starting price for speaking. I also say, if you're going to be a coach, at a minimum charge about 15. If you're going to go to corporates expect you. They expect you to start at about $3,000. They really do. Some will try and knock you down, but you go and look at that company's balance sheet. When they're making, you can't even catch up with those zeros and those commas. They can afford $3,000. They spend that on it. They spend more than that on a drinks party at Christmas. All right. But what's the value that you're bringing? That's the key point. Don't get hung up on the price. Focus more on the value that you're bringing to the client. And when you can nail that bit down, it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah. Just a quick question, David, because again, sort of, really resonate everything that you're saying. This is kind of what we're trying to get people to kind of engage with. But I'm curious, the example that when you were sort of explaining your kind of route in, early on, I needed to kind of earn the equivalent to what my salary was before, then think I need to kind of double that, life things change and whatever. And yes. your kind of realization was that the promise of value was the thing that needed to change. I'm kind of curious, is it the promise of value which needed to change, or the awareness of your value which changed?
I think they go hand in hand. Because if you're starting out, it's the promise of value, and you don't have that big track record, it can be a bit more difficult to prove, right? And again, even when we're doing consulting, coaching, or any other professional service, unless we have a real concrete discussion with our clients as to how our impact is going to make that difference, sometimes it can be quite hard to prove, right? How do I prove that when I've gone in and I've done a leadership coaches, it's made a massive difference to the workforce? That stuff is quite subjective unless we have stuff that we agreed on from before. But the promise of value piece is me going, okay, even if I did this for free, this is the value you're going to get out of it. So a lot of people used to come to me for and senior leaders still do this. They come to get me to coach them to speak in public. Most people are terrified of speaking in public. Some people wouldn't even do this, even though we're on a podcast. And I will go, like, my first thing I will say to people is, if you're ever in a position where someone's asked you to speak, recognize that they've seen your value. That's what you've got to understand. And secondly, walk into that room and say, I deserve to be here. So all my little clients have got this little piece of paper, like, they'll go in and go, I deserve to be here. And then they go in there and they kick ass, right? But it's that little shift, that small shift, those few words, or that encouragement about, if somebody's invited you to do something that they've seen your value, that's a major shift for people that I've worked with, because all of a sudden they're going into the room and they're not scared anymore. They're still nervous, because I still get nervous. I'm not going to lie. You still get nervous. It's good nervous energy, but you're not scared. And so it's being able to identify what that is, whatever area you're working in, how are you shifting it for that individual, and how could you prove it to them that it's that value? And then you tweak, and then you learn, and then you tweak, and then you learn. So it's a continuous process. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So I'm going to make the assumption here, there's someone listening to this who's maybe been working 3, maybe 5 years in their current way. They conceptually know that there's value that they're providing.
Yeah.
But there's something here around stories. And there's 2 ways I'm looking at it. There's the story you tell around the value. Now, the story that I heard you tell is that you go to Ernst & Young, you go to these big consultancies. They will charge you this much, but you're going to get this person, someone else doing the work.
Yeah. I get you.
Another person doing the work. So, so there's a real thing like, oh yeah, oh my god, that I can start seeing the rationale. It's turning into a narrative that makes sense to me. So there's a storytelling aspect as you, the provider of value. And then there's another story. This is an internal one, which I'm maybe even more interested in. Is this, what if they don't buy?
Yeah.
What if they reject me? What does that mean about me and my confidence about the value that I bring? Is there anything there that you could share about? Well, help people understand, A, telling the story about the work so that people understand the price, but B, also this feeling of, okay, how do I avoid this story of like, oh, if someone doesn't buy, then that means I'm not good enough.
Okay. So one of my favorite books, just in terms of principle, and it's a lot of these old school, I'm just going to say this now with a caveat. I have a couple of books that are old school, but because they were written by 1900s American British males, right? There's a slight leaning towards it being slightly misogynistic and kind of privileged. So that's my context. But I think the principle still applies, right? Principle still applies because it worked for me. The Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. One of the things I really loved about that book is he said, get a mastermind. Surround yourself with individuals who will encourage you, who will foster. Do I ever get worried like, oh my God, I've given this person that stuff and they might reject? Of course it is. And you know what happens? You go, well, my fee's going to be 5,000. And they go, oh, I can only find 2,000. And you're like, okay, I'll take the 2,000 then, if that's all right. Because you're looking and thinking, oh my God, I'm actually glad that they actually responded to me. But part of the beauty of having a mastermind, and where I was able to join masterminds like the PSA and work with other coaches, like I used to be when Twitter first came out all those years ago, and I was on a platform called Academy. And even when I first started on LinkedIn, I would ask other coaches, hey, coaches, you know, a lot of us are in a bit of a bind around pricing. 6 of us get together for dinner. Let's have a conversation. It's going to be a really frank conversation about how we run our business, how we price, how we market. If you're up for it, let's go. £30 a head. Let's go for it. And it was amazing how often I was oversubscribed. Now, people came there and they were absolutely terrified. Oh my God, I don't want to tell anybody our price. But we go, no, look, let's go in. let's be really transparent about this and let's hold our value. And the mastermind piece was powerful because it wasn't just in your head anymore, right? And if anybody got a sale that was rejected, you had, this is what happened. And then somebody goes, well, did you say this to them? Did you give them this point of value? What would have kind of happened if you did this in another way? And you find that that was really, really good. And the second thing I did, which was really good, is I got mentors and what I call my personal advisory board. So even at my age now, I still have mentors, older and younger. And I go, like, especially like my kids laugh at me. I used to be in technology, but give me a phone and I'm crap, right? I just want to answer calls and send texts. But there are younger people who mentor me around technology, and it's incredible. There are older people who will give me a bit of a guide around how to grow a business, how to be able to navigate across cultures. Like I've been doing a lot of work in the last year for clients in Asia Pacific, and especially around leadership. The leadership that's in Asia Pacific is very different than the West. So I've had people who are mentoring me in that space and going, okay, look, I know I'll rock into this room, this 6'2" tall black guy with his booming voice just walking in there. How does that land? And I'm like, okay, Dave, you need to just turn the volume just down a little bit, okay? Everybody can see you. You're this friendly giant, but it can be a lot, okay? But also understand it's quiet leadership. How we do in there is quite hierarchical. We respect authority. We respect elders. And what happens in the West where you're forced to challenge and have conflict, that's not going to work here. For my work, having those pieces of feedback has been brilliant, because then I go in and I do these workshops and I start to tell people what I've understood about the culture. And all of a sudden there's this acceptance and there's this trust and there's this dialogue. And so for me, having those two key things made a massive difference. Having the mastermind, so I can have that conversation among peers. And if I couldn't find one that existed, I created one. And the second one is just finding mentors and individuals. And I think it's quite easy, but a lot of people are worried about, oh, is it a formal process? No, just say, look, hey, I'm just looking for somebody who's had experience of being able to do X, Y, and Z. Can you give me one or two people that you've mentored already that I can use as a reference? And can we work together for 6 months? And I know it sounds, I'm really hoping, I don't mean to sound blasé, but it is a lot more straightforward than we think. And the only reason it becomes difficult is because of the story we put in our mind that somebody might tell us it's not going to work. But those two, definitely.
Wonderful. I just put a little poll out there for anyone who's listening live right now. Are you part of a mastermind group right now, or do you have a mentor that's guiding you? Because it's one of the things that's really important to us for the Happy Pricing course, and also the Happy Startup School. The principle that when you're in the thick of it, you're sometimes the last person to have the answer.
Yes.
And having people around you to be able to reflect what you're saying, what you're thinking, actually just allows you to just rise above the mess.
Yes.
And I think there's for me, the importance of the mastermind or the mentor. There's that level of just, I don't know, I just don't have the actual knowledge. Yeah. There's also I'm in such an emotional state, for one of a time, that I can't see what I need to see.
Yeah.
And so there's I think it is my and Lawrence's mission to create more community, for one of a better term.
100%.
Places where we can where we can turn up and say, actually, I have no idea what's going on here.
Yes.
Can someone
be okay with that? I just say, for the sake of argument, I'm just throwing it out there as an idea, because I like Brighton as well. Although your seagulls are terrorists, all right, let's just put that out there. Seagulls in Brighton are terrorists. Okay, I'm not eating food on any promenade with those around. Okay, but let's just say, for the sake of argument, you said, right, okay, Dave, there, as an extension of this pricing conversation, we've had about 12 people who wanted to really kind of like talk some issues out and really think about how they were going to build it up. Would you be happy to come down on the train, have dinner with us, and we can have this conversation? I'll go, yeah. I'll jump on the train. You've got to pay for me then, right? I jump on the train, you pay for my food, right? That's all good, right? All right. Jump on the train, you pay for my food. I rock up, we're on a table. There's 12 of us. We sit down for 2 hours. We got to have a really, really good conversation. How do we do this? What are the questions that you want from before? And then you build it. And very often, to your point, we create all these narratives and stories in our head. But it's just as simple as someone going, all right, you guys are going to go and do this, the happy meal, I'm going to call it, which sounds really McDonald's-y, right? But you know what I'm talking about, the happy startup meal, okay?
Yeah, they already own Happy Meal.
Okay, right. So we got the happy startup meal. I got the happy startup meal, okay? But 12 of us sit around the table, and people come with the ideas of what it is, but not just, because sometimes we can have these conversations and people can hide behind a screen, right? But when you're looking at somebody in the white of their eyes and going, it will be okay, and this is how you do it, and let's work through this, that stuff is incredibly powerful. That's my simple offer to you. So if you want to take me up on it, fine. Yeah. Good restaurant though. Please.
Oh, there's so many requests I have of you. It's just whether I can afford $5,000.
No, this one for free. This one for free. Come on, all you have to do is pay for free. All right?
I would like to. I think there's a lot of there's so much I'd like to talk to you about, not only about pricing, but especially your leadership work. And
that's fine.
And
I'll be back.
You are a polymath. There's so much stuff that there's a wisdom there that I would love to see how we can spread that to more of our community as well in terms of the way you think. But it's interesting that whole when you said, have the whites of their eyes and being present in a space, how that shifts the energy. And we see that at our events and our retreats. It's amazing, and particularly over a meal. There's something about a meal that brings people together in a different way than a conference table.
Yes.
But on that as well, I've found, given the past 2 years that we've been in and having to do a lot of stuff remote, particularly a lot of our coaching, and I'm assuming you're doing this as well, there is a level of connection because of the quality of the connection, the internet connection we've got, that you can really have like this.
Yes.
You can talk to someone and you can read, and we've seen that with our coaching groups. It's like, it just shifts the energy just knowing that someone actually hears what's going on for you.
Yeah.
And a lot of that time when we're thinking about, can I raise the prices by 100 quid? Can I double it? Can I step into this conversation where I feel like the fear, having people to just even acknowledge that and say, yeah, I'm with you. I know what 100%. That's like.
100%.
Rather than,
and sometimes those changes may be with new clients, because sometimes we're afraid because we've got the existing one, right? We've got 5 existing clients who are paying us 150. Are they going to pay us 250? I just go to them, look, I'm just letting you know that there's going to be a price change. You've got a year to adjust to that. But my new clients who are coming on board, they're going to be paying £100 more. So when you see that, make the most of the years, kind of like rinse me for what it is for that year that I'm there. But it's going to be changing afterwards. And part of that I've learned from the masterminds, that when I was in there, if I wanted to increase my price, to go from £150 to £5,000 over a number of years, for some people, and look, I'm telling you, I'll be really honest with you, Frank, my price is going up to £7,500 for the new year. And again, that's my promise of value, because I wanted to do less for more. But I really want people to have, not just to hear my voice, but when I'm speaking, I want them to have really good materials that they can go away with, set up mastermind groups, go and do stuff that's done elsewhere. And that stuff for me is critical, because I'm okay with doing that. And to your point, one of the reasons why I'm okay to sit down and have a dinner with somebody, when I've obviously created the relationship and the connection, is that I know that I've been able to build it in such a way that I can go, right, to use the kind of like a biblical term, I can do 10% tithe, where I can go, this is the cause that I really love. And so I can go to schools, to prisons, to spaces where people don't have that, or small businesses, or people that I've created a relationship with. We sit down, we have a couple of hours. I know you can't afford my £5,000 fee, which is fine. And I say that not in a pejorative way, but I know individuals can't do that. But what I will then do is I go, okay, so we've struck up a relationship. It's this trust. You're not just coming, oh, can I get you for a coffee? And then try and pick everything out of my brain. This is me and you creating a relationship and sitting down and then really being able to go, right, what can you pick from me in that space and time? And I believe that this is why I was talking about family and purpose at the beginning, because to your point that you made at the beginning, it's really great to build a business. And, to build a sustainable business, you have to have part of it will be your purpose, your people, and your product, and profit, right? Because you need to be able to have that profit to keep it to keep it going. But there's also bandwidth where you know that there are going to be some clients or spaces who can't afford the full amount, and that's okay. Can you build enough bandwidth with that? Yeah. So for me, knowing that I can charge a premium elsewhere, so that on another side I can offer to individuals who can't afford that premium. There are individuals who will I'm having a bit of a rant, but bear with me. Although I like, one of the things I've started doing now is I'm starting to say to individuals, look, I charge companies big money. What I'm starting to do now is I'm going to start doing some webinars, and those webinars I fix at £120. All right, so that's £100 plus VAT. All right, and I'm saying a lot of these organizations get the benefit of some of the stuff that I talk about, but there are lots of people who just seeing the stuff that I do on LinkedIn, on my blog, is not going to be enough. So coming to an intense session with me for 60 to 75 minutes, pay 100 quid, you're going to get materials, but you'll get access to me. And being able to do that at a wide level, if I get 100 people in the room, for the sake of argument, I've made 10 grand. All right. But there are still 100 people who would have got the benefit from me that don't have to work in a corporate. And for me, at £100, if £100 is too much, then go and read the content that I've put online, because there's still a lot of quality in there, and all across the board, from your really basic free content as to how you guys got to meet me, all the way up to your real premium. You're okay with that spectrum as well. So knowing what that bandwidth and what that range of products and pricing points that you have actually makes a difference for you. By the way, just before I forget, there's somebody put in the note about Brussels and
dinner is
Brussels
on him.
Right? You know what? We can have a virtual dinner. All right, I'm putting it out there. All right, if you want to, we can jump on a call and we have a virtual dinner, and we can do that. I'm just linking back. That's my offer. That's my offer to you at the school. If we, I'm happy to come to Brighton, and we can put a little camera at the end of the table, right? Or we can do a virtual one. But for me, it's important. Again, the promise of value here for me is that my value is not just tied to price. Does that make sense? It's not just tied to price. I know where it will show up, but other times it will. There are other times where I'll go, look, here it is. Let's just do what we have to do.
I'm kind of curious.
Go for it.
Oh, sorry, Carlos. I was going to say. So I'm kind of curious. As you're kind of growing kind of awareness and sort of understanding of your own value and confidence in your own value, as that kind of changed, how did that sort of affect how you were engaging with prospective clients? So were you kind of following the same approach, just with a newfound confidence that stood behind effectively a higher amount? Or was the process by which you kind of were bringing clients on board and kind of developing those relationships, did it change? I was kind of curious about the difference between those things.
Oh, I love that. So here's my theory. Competence breeds confidence, right? And I think sometimes people get it the other way around. But for me, competence breeds confidence. It's one thing to give all this swagger and say, I'm a great speaker. But if people are consistently paying me the amount of money, then that's the evidence, right? And so as a speaker, I've gone away. I've learned stand-up comedy. I've learned amateur dramatics. I've learned rhetoric. I've learned all this stuff that makes me a rounded speaker to really be able to deliver. Then people are paying it. So I'm going, okay, as I get more competent, I get more confident. And what I didn't realize, and this was quite interesting, the power of testimonials. I used to think, this is trash. Because you just got some dude who's never known you. David was so excellent. He came and he changed my life. And I'm like, come on, really? When I see some of this, I'm like, somebody told you to write that. But I realized that testimonials are really powerful, especially for smaller businesses, because individuals, it's a bit like, Trustpilot or any one of those things that happen online now. It's a way of individuals going, the value that this person said they were going to bring is great. And I never really thought much about it, but there were 2 or 3 things happened. One, I did some work for Virgin Media. This was about 10 years ago. 10 or so years ago. I did some work for Virgin Media. I was doing some youth enterprise stuff and what have you, and I did it. And in 5 incidences. So one, I did an interview with Richard Branson in his house in Oxford as part of this thing. Another one, I ended up going to South Africa with Richard Branson and a couple of other people. And then I just did some stuff for his pitch competition. And I say this in all humility, because I used to do a lot of stuff, music and dance. I used to do nightclub nights. So there's a whole other story for another podcast. Right. Those value nights. But what it was is that you realize you met a lot of famous people, and you get to, after the third one, you kind of like go, we're all the same, really. Do you know what I mean? The only difference is ego. Okay, and you got more money in your bank, right? That's a really nice car. But it is what it was. But then I realized something. I put a picture of me and Richard Branson on my profile. And it just went boom. And people started to create stories like, oh my God, you went to Richard Branson's house. Are you going to Necker Island? I'm like, dude, I only spent 10 minutes with him. Calm the hell down. But that testimonial and that presence of working with that specific client, especially in the corporate space, just took it to another level. But then let me phrase it right back down. I'll give you an example of the person that I spoke to with the £2,000 product for 100 people. She went and told loads of people, and it wasn't my main thing. But then I was able to just go and run a course. I don't do it anymore, but I did this course, and people came because of that testimonial to see how they could replicate it. So the testimonial piece is quite powerful, but it also stands as a reason for you to be able to go, right, I'm competent at this. I know I'm good. I'm a good accountant. I'm a good coach. I'm a good architect. I'm a good consultant. Somebody's really like that, and they've given me a really good testimonial. How do I then leverage that to the next level? And what you realize is that all parts of the journey you're going on, you're getting more money. So and you're getting more credibility and you're getting more value. You know, somebody said to me the other day, and it really kind of like hit me in the gut. I said, you know what, you're charging $5,000, but there are people out there who have just done a little TED talk and they're charging $75,000. You should be a $75,000 speaker. That hit me in the gut. I'm like, what? I did 10 of those and I got a house in Surrey, right? In Brighton, right? I need 8 of that. 12 of those and I got a house in Brighton, right? But what really hit me was the perceived value. It was that perceived value. So going back to that point about the masterminds, going back to the point about the mentors and individuals, you need the testimonials, you need the mastermind people who will reaffirm to you what's happening. You need the mentors who will give you that guidance. And every step of the way, the confidence increases, You don't get attached to all those kind of negative conversations around money. And a big thing for me that's important here is money's there to serve you, not the other way around. And the moment you start to kind of like, get really scared about it and just think, I need to really keep the pennies, all of a sudden you become subservient to money and not the other way around. And it should never be that case. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it sort of tallies. One of the things that we teach on the course is this idea of pricing outside in, because everything that you're saying there, because it's getting people to, in the kind of, for want of a better phrase, walking in the shoes of the people on the other side of the table. So, whether it's the because it's actually you have no idea really the kind of huge value of your work in many instances. The huge impact which people enjoy from kind of spending time with you, from you being able to share the things that you do. And actually, so the more time that we can spend by walking in their shoes, by understanding all of their motivations, their interests, the good feelings and solutions that they want by kind of spending time with you, that's when you kind of open up an understanding of what the value can be 100%. And what the value is.
100%.
Yeah, I like the fact that you mentioned the good feelings and solutions, because what I'm hearing from your experience, David, is there's also the intangible value here.
Yeah.
While I hear you're an amazing speaker, you can inspire people, the testimonials, the trust that a picture with Richard Branson creates, these elements, they're not, maybe the service, the thing you're doing is exactly the same.
Yes.
But that perception of trust, knowing that this person is a certain level, has delivered before, that changes the concept of value. So I wanted to make sure that people understood that actually just because someone next to you charges a certain amount of money doesn't mean you have to charge the same amount.
100%.
And just because 100%. Haven't changed what you've done doesn't mean you can't change your price.
Yes.
Because it's so dependent not on you but on the other person.
Yeah.
So if that feels like a message from there. The other thing is that one of the things we talk about is like that number that you put out to the world. As much as in my head, in a perfect world, price is always going to change depending on who you talk to.
Yes.
And it's a fluid thing. But on the other flip side, that number you put out there is a signal.
Yes.
And Mr. Ben taught me this. It's like that number is always going to be a signal. You don't have to pay that all the time. And to your point about working with schools and prisons and different people, one of the things that I learned by teaching this course with Ben, someone said, actually, I'm not giving you a discount. I'm investing in you. Yes. I believe in you so much that actually that $7,500 is my investment in you.
Yeah.
Rather than saying, I'm going to reduce my price. It's like, I'm going to put this energy, this time. You're aligned with what I believe is important in the world. And so that's why I'm going to work with you, full stop. Yes. And it's not about the money, it's about the alignment. So that for me is like, while we want to work with people where they don't have to give us money, it doesn't stop us from putting this is the price.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And I hope people can use that.
Yeah, I love that. I'm investing in you. I love that. That's powerful. Yeah.
And one of the other things, which just the sort of the kind of flip of that a little bit, which referencing something you mentioned earlier, David, about the companies can afford it. The kind of building on the point you were just saying there about the signal. It's not only that companies, if the things you do are selling to companies, actually, it's not even just that they can afford it. In many instances, for bigger companies, it's actually easier for them to buy when you are charging more. And a lot of this is about how easy your services are to buy. And in that sense, money is an important signal. So again, important just to be kind of in the mindset of the people who you are providing your work for.
100%. And don't make the decision. So I'm very quickly, Carl. Don't make the decision. Don't make the decision for people about whether or not they can afford it or not. That's not your choice to make. If somebody says they can't, that's cool. That's not your client then. You know, if somebody can walk into Primark and buy goods, they'll make that choice. If they can't go into Selfridges, that's the choice they make. But Selfridges doesn't stand up there and go, well, look, I'm going to put this up here to see if you can afford it or not. You walk in. If you can't afford it, you'll walk the hell back out, all right? So the thing is that we're not supposed to be there making that choice for individuals, because to your point that you were making earlier, Ben, there's something here about, do we want to sell to people, or do we want people to buy from us? And that's very different, because when people are buying, they have the choice. When people feel like they're sold to, it kind of like becomes more around coercion. It feels more around, okay, do I have to make this choice under pressure? Whereas if somebody goes, I need to buy this because I see the value, very, very different. And the other thing I realize as well, is clients who have bought from me rather than clients who I've sold to stay with me for longer.
Yeah. Well, this is for me. It links to what you were talking about before about there's different, and what Ben was saying, you know, making it easier to buy from you. I think one of the ways that you're making it easy for people to buy from you is because there's a range of options. I can just listen to you on LinkedIn. I could go into your podcast. I could eventually buy your book. I could go to that course, or I could take up the full fat offer. I'm going to go and work one-on-one.
Yes.
And that, I think, is part of that, A, giving choice, B, helping people understand the relative numbers. So, that's that much, and that's that much, and that's why I pay that much. So it removes some of that fear and ambiguity. But also, I'm experiencing it myself. I'm going on a journey of trusting you more and getting to know you more.
Yes.
And and we had this on a podcast a couple of weeks ago with a guy called Tad Hargrave, from a thing called Marketing for Hippies. He said, you can build trust from a distance.
Yes.
And how do you do that? Because we don't have to talk to every single person in order for them to trust us. We can do it thanks to this beautiful technology from the safety of our homes without even talking to you. I can actually get to know you, David, without ever having to go in front of you and talk to you. And that's, for me, I think, where people can start thinking about building a story of value in their work, and that being based on the trust, not just the stuff that we do.
Yeah. By the way, you've just given me an idea. You just said about the full fat offering. So now I'm thinking about for full fat, semi-skimmed and skimmed.
There we go. We got a whole dairy line up here. Just make sure you're not lactose intolerant. And
right.
I wanted to. There's a question I'd like to address because Kerry had an interesting question, and then to finish off, I just wanted to talk a bit more about you and maybe ways that people can actually engage with you if they want to learn more from you. Yeah. Firstly, this question from Kerry, which I think is quite pertinent. I think we talked to it a bit already, but maybe we can just hit it head on. Kerry's asking, do you have any advice on pricing yourself when you have 20 years of experience and find yourself competing against people who are younger and cheaper, or services like Fiverr? I feel like I have to lower my prices to stay competitive or to get a job, but then sometimes feel shortchanged in the process. So anything that you can offer for Kerry in that situation?
So again, it's the promise of value. So I know that if I wanted to get, let's just say for a graphic design, if I wanted to get graphic design, I could fool myself into thinking I'm Leonardo da Vinci, go and set up an account on Canva, go on there and whack out a design with a couple of fonts and colors and think I'm good. A real designer will look at it and go, what the hell are you doing? And so for me, the investment around the branding or what have you is that value that person brings in. Yes, there are younger people coming into it, and I've seen that even around, like I use Squarespace for one of my sites, and I've seen the range of individuals who have offered some stuff at real cheap, and it looks cheap and cheerful, and others who will charge a premium, and you're like, okay, that's the one I'm going to go down because that's what I'm going to be supported by. So I'd say, depending on your service, Kerry, identify the avatar or the ideal client that you'd want to work with. Who does that actually look like? and also being able to position it, because a lot of the Fiverr kind of cheaper versions, they tend to be one-offs. And I think that in terms of being able to offer a service that's better, you want to be able to develop a client relationship rather than just having a one-off customer. So if you can define who that client looks like rather than just them being a customer, you can offer a smorgasbord or a buffet of offerings that they have that allow you to go in there for a longer time. And the thing that you have that a lot of them don't have is 20 years of experience. And 20 years of experience may not seem like much to individuals, but that means you can see the world in a very different way. You know, I say to my daughters, I go, look, you think you know the world, right? I'm 52. Trust me, when I was cooking, I thought I knew it all. I got slapped upside the head so many times. And I said, something's going to happen. I'm going to nod my head. And I'm like, man, nod it. See, I told you so. And they know it. And they look at me like, Dad, don't nod your head. I'm like, all right, because I do that. And that's the experience piece. And again, you know, the experience could be 5 years. But to your point, it could be 20 years. And there's a big difference between 5 and 20. And I would say really, really knuckle down on what is it that sweet spot that you have with the clients that you've already worked with. And this is where the testimonials bit comes back in again. What is it that you brought to the table that made a difference? What is it that you brought to the table that made them go, oh my God, this is good. I wouldn't want to go anywhere else. And if I did go anywhere else, I know it'd only be cheap and cheerful because I didn't have the budget. So really nail down who that avatar is. Stick with your prices. In fact, with all the cheaper ones coming in, I'd actually say raise them. I'd honestly raise them. Kerry, I'll give you my email at the end of this, right? Just reach out to me afterwards. All right.
Nice.
And we'll jump on the phone for an hour. Is that okay? We'll jump on the phone for an hour. All right.
There you go. Oh, she's liking that.
Yeah.
Ben, any thoughts from you?
No, I mean, I think one thing that was in mind was actually referencing something that David earlier, which he touched on again there. This just reminding yourself, okay, there's a relationship between the competence and confidence. You know, the 20 years you have experience of seeing things in a certain way and kind of trusting in that. And also a kind of extension on David's point around the avatar. There will be some clients who only want to spend the Fiverr equivalent because they don't see the value in it. Yeah. But equally, there are very many other clients who want to invest in the right kind of solution. And it's kind of having confidence to know, okay, so I'm not for you. You are the Fiverr people. But by contrast, you are the not Fiverr people. And your avatar is the not Fiverr people, assuming that that's the way you want to go. But yeah, so just the kind of confidence in those things.
I want to build on that from Ben actually as well. Is that the first thing that sprang to mind is that you tell that explicit story. Go with Fiverr, you get this. Go with me, you get this. Because I think that's part of the service that you provide your potential customer is helping them make the right decision for themselves. And when the story I have is like, one of the things that I wanted to do, we had a course. I wanted to get the little subtitles transcription things, but I had no idea whether that's going to add value to my course. So I wasn't prepared to invest a lot of money in it. So I went to Fiverr because I wanted to test out the idea. But if I knew that course was going to make X amount of money and actually having those subtitles going to be intrinsically important, I would consider having that done properly and well. And I'd be thinking about other courses I'm going to do. So I want to be working with someone that I can have a relationship with. And even when I looked on Fiverr for that service, there was such a range of prices that I didn't want to go for the cheap one because I didn't want to get burned. But I couldn't afford the expensive one because I wasn't sure about the value of what I wanted to get. So I went somewhere in the middle. Not to say that you need to price in the middle, but to illustrate, I didn't know what I needed because I didn't understand the value of the service that I was buying. So I think as an experienced, particularly someone with 20 years of experience, relating to what David does is like, for me, when you tell the stories of that experience, tell the stories of that perspective, that gives people a better idea of how to judge value. Because it's otherwise they're just going in cold and they're like, everyone, you know, we're all scared of stuff that we don't know. So we'll go for the safest option. Cool. Awesome. Boom. Well, we've got pricing, the third business skill. I haven't heard of that book.
Haven't heard of that. No.
It's a dry book. I'm going to tell you now. It's dry, but then this is one of the things I've also learned around this. A lot of the stuff that is boring is also brilliant when you put it into practice. All right. Yeah. This book is dry as hell, but it really revolutionized, especially when I was dealing with bigger clients. So we can put that in the show notes if you want as well.
Yeah, I'm going to stick that in the chat now. And unfortunately, I've only
Yeah.
got an Amazon link, but hopefully you can
That's
find
fine.
better places to buy.
Yeah,
But
pricing. Yeah.
I like the idea that kind of boring is brilliant too. Maybe that's hope for us, Carlos, on the podcast generally.
I'm going to say that
Far from boring. Listen, 28 people signed up and they stayed. All right.
if we were going to sell the value of happy pricing, like, you can go for the boring books. But if you want to have fun, if you want to enjoy this journey of learning how the fuck should I price, join us. You know, you might not get all the genius hacks, but you'll actually do what you're going to do because you actually enjoy pricing rather than. Oh! Anyway, I'm conscious of the time. I'm really appreciative of all your wisdom and knowledge. I feel torn now. There's one last question.
That's fine.
All right, this is the last question. Nirish is asking. Okay, let's see. What is the biggest shift in mindset needed for someone who's transitioning from an employee consultant to an independent consultant stroke coach in terms of pricing and value? I like this question. This is a good question. All right. Men, what is your perspective on this?
Men get thrown under the bus.
Who wants to go first?
You're still the same person. The sign on the outside may be slightly different, but you're still the same person. And the fact that you've worked for a larger consultancy shows that you know what you're doing. It's still the same person. It's just a different sign outside the building. Once we recognize that, and I'm not so bad about it, I'm not playing down that transition, but it's recognizing that Q squared for me, I don't compare myself to Ernst & Young. We don't have 20,000 people and partnerships and all the rest of that, but we do have a lot of the same clients that we work towards, and we bring something different. Ernst & Young, I'm happy for them and what they do, but what we do at Q squared is Q squared, and we go in at the level that we are good at, and we own it there. The sign may be different on the building, but I'm not comparing myself to them because Ernst & Young couldn't do what I do. And I say that not in an arrogant way. I say that where my competence has allowed me to be confident. I say they can't do what I do. And I'm happy with that. And I can't do what they do. And that's absolutely okay. So just because the sign on the building has changed, the person who's working and doing that offering is still good. So hold your own. Yeah. And make use of the masterminds and the mentors and all the other people around you to do that as well.
Boom. Ben.
Yeah, I guess one thing just I would add to that, just picking up on this point around the sign on the building. For many of the big companies, and we'll pick on Ernst & Young because we mentioned them a few times, but it's like the value, there is value in the sign on the building for a certain type of buyer who wants the security of scale and all of those sorts of things. And actually, your opportunity is not being that, to David's point, it is being you. You don't need to be selling a sign on the building. You want to be selling the value. And I think just to pointedly to your question around what needs to change in kind of mindset, I think one of the first kind of watch outs is that because you're making this transition, your value is not less. That has to be just the first obvious kind of point to call out. Your value is not less by not being in the organization. The opportunity is your value is much more. But you need to just kind of be focusing on the value, focusing on what it means for the clients who you work with, for you to do the work that you do. That is the kind of important driver in all of this.
Cool. I think to hopefully not labor the point, the mindset shift of it's not about you. It's not about what you do. It's about the person who's going to make the decision to work with you. So forget, you got a different label or you're a different way. Who is it that person is in front of you? What is it that's driving them, motivating them? What are they scared of? What are they trying to get to? Focus on that. Forget, if you've got years of experience in doing your work, you know what to do. It's about really building that trust and relationship and understanding that empathy. This person is really struggling. They need help. They want to get somewhere. They're scared about something. If you can dive into that, then have the tactics and strategies to then get to the right number, I think you'll be fine.
Super.
Boom. Okay. Awesome. If people would love to, get to know you more, follow your stuff, where's a good place for them to hang out to learn more about your work, David?
So I think the most, in terms of the most visible space for my thinking, if you can handle a couple of swears, I'll just put it in here. It'll be my LinkedIn. Most people know and have seen the content that I do. I'm very unapologetic in my my content there, but I'm also quite the one thing I always say to people: I speak my truth, but I'm also open and willing to learn other truths as well. I don't feel like I have all the answers, but I'm not afraid to talk to subjects around people that may be afraid to talk about it. I'm not afraid. There's no subject that's off limits for me, because I think we are grown adults. We should be able to talk about anything. Otherwise than that, if you type David McQueen into Google, I come up in the top 3 results. So, you know, whatever. And the murderer's the one on 4. Don't ignore him. Just but yeah, usually LinkedIn is the best place to get hold of me, and I'll put the link in the chat.
Nice, awesome, cool. And you're in the process of writing a book?
I am. So it's called The Brave
How is that
Leader.
going, and how are you doing that?
So I'm self-publishing, but it's gone to my editor now. So he's in the middle of tweaking and making sure it sounds sensible. I'm looking to launch it either the end of January or beginning of February next year. And it's called The Brave Leader, and it talks about inclusive leadership in the workplace. So yeah, quite excited about that. Brilliant. It's painful as well. It's painful. But
yeah, I was curious about that. It's like, what is that? What are the pain points been for you, for someone who's interested in maybe writing a book?
Okay, so if you've had 2 children and somebody said don't have a third, that was the third. What was the third? That was the wayward child who wouldn't come in and wouldn't behave. The thing for me, I think people need to understand, is it's like another job. The energy and effort, and you can't help but do. You know, I try to move away from perfectionism, but you know that this book is going to go out into the world, and people anywhere in the world can go and see it, and you want them to have an impression of what your thinking is. And it's tough going. It's taken me over a year to pull this stuff together. I've rewritten some pieces, but be okay once it's done to just let it go. It's like, as I said, it's like a kid. When a kid gets older, and I know I'm at the other end now, where my kids are a lot older. Just let them go. I've done what I've done. I've got to let you go, and then see what happens. And if it doesn't work first time, you can always do a second edition. But yeah, it's honestly like having a second job. So be prepared for that.
Be prepared for it. Well, I'm curious about it, because it's actually this Friday we're doing our Friday Fireside webinar, and it's with a guy who's written a book called Write Useful Books.
Yes.
So if anyone's listening who's interested in writing books, there's the emotional roller coaster that I'm hearing from David, and also then there's the actual process. So if you're interested in that, join us on Friday. That would be that's something that feels connected to what we're talking about here. Yeah. And finally, if anyone is interested in finding out, if you want to follow the whole pricing journey and learn more about pricing, please join the newsletter. There's a link here. Learn more about pricing. It would mean that it'll be easier for us to communicate any new stuff, share the recordings. We're going to post this on YouTube as well. We're going to post this as a podcast, and any kind of thoughts and revelations we have, we'll share that as within the newsletter. So if you want to get more confident with your pricing, please click on that link. It has been an amazing pleasure there. I can't believe time has flown that quickly. It's been really a wonderful conversation. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
I echo that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for your time and attention. And until next time, happy startup dinner meal thing.
Yes.
I'm going to have to think about that one. I'm going to make that happen. So whether that's virtual or in person, watch this space. Brilliant. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you everyone. See you soon. Bye-bye.